Okay, Jordan is in the restroom right now, taking a leak, and we're going to queue up the 34th episode right now while he's gone. This week we're joined with Dan Piraro of Bizarro Comics, the comic strip. We kind of sneak a little chat with Matt Miner about the new Liberator comic, and the one that's really scary for me... Oh, you hear that? Yep, that's him. The one that's really scary for me is my dad joins us this week to talk about our poll and his experiences with ghosts. This episode this week, though, is brought to you by Bombs and Beating Hearts. Go to bombsandbeatinghearts.bandcamp.com and you can get all their new... You get their album. You can name your own price. So, if you don't like it, hey, you don't really have to pay for it. But if you do like it, drop them some money, and we get 100% of the proceeds, which is going to new things like microphones, sound batting equipment, and new DIY pop filters. So check them out at bondsandbeatingheart.bandcamp.com.
Oh, you're doing an intro without me.
Have fun, guys.
Just real quick for events, we have none, and that's it. I forgot. There is a game night on July 27th, but it's not next week, so I didn't really forget. We're going to be playing Cards Against Humanities and Killer Bunnies, and we're probably going to be at the U of U Student Union building. We will keep you posted on that. As of right now, we don't have a place booked.
Go to whichsidepodcast.com/events to check out the events in your local area. If you do not see them listed, drop us a line. We'll add a calendar for you.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
Hey, how are you? Sorry, well. I never have my headset plugged in. When people ask if I have time to talk, I always assume they mean text.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not us. We're recording.
Oh, you're recording?
Fuck yeah, we're recording.
Fuck. I just got tricked onto a podcast, huh?
Yeah. But while we're waiting for Dan to sign on.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah. So how's the Liberator going?
Liberator's going awesome. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the million reviews that I've been reposting and tweeting everywhere. But it's been picked up and kind of accepted largely by the comic media and by a lot of mainstream media too, like New York Post and Red Eye Chicago. And, some of the bigger comic sites have really, been very, very positive about Liberator, which is incredible. I wasn't expecting this much support. I was expecting a whole lot more in the way of resistance. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. You sound really shocked, but everyone I've ever talked to just thought it was such an awesome idea. And I don't think any of us ever had any doubts.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's awesome for the animal rights crowd, but when I was doing this book, part of it was, I wanted people who don't think about animals and who eat animals and who think that activists are terrorists. I wanted them to read this book and have it maybe plant some seeds in their mind, And it looks like that's actually happening, and I'm fucking stoked about it.
Well, I gotta say, you planted a huge, big head in Jordan's mind.
Oh, really? Because I put that little Easter egg in there?
Yeah.
Well,
I just like to fuck with people. Say, hey, no, look, there's my name.
Yeah, when I first started doing this book, Jordan was still in jail, and I thought it was going to come out a lot sooner. So I thought this would come out while he was in jail. But then it was like, once you were out, it's not like I was going to take it away.
We can always fix that and put him back in.
I appreciate not being back in, and I appreciate being put in the book.
Sure. There's Easter eggs in that book.
I saw Free Pussy Riot.
Yeah, there's the Pussy Riot Easter egg. There's an Easter egg to Steve Murphy that no one will ever get. There's an Easter egg to there's a few others. I don't want to spoil them all because I want the savvy activist to kind of be able to find them. But yeah, there's a few things in there.
I love Easter eggs, so that was super exciting.
I know, I love that too, and I keep telling my artist, okay, well, why don't we add this over here, and let's change the name of this to that, so that it's a nod to this person, So whenever there's like text or a book in a panel, or there's a label showing, it's like, what could I make this say?
That's awesome. And I love looking at the details of things too. Like even the tablet, I'm like, look, there's the little icons at the bottom.
Oh yeah, and if you notice on the tablet, this is an Easter egg that no one will get, but it made my wife cry. The person who wrote like the reporter's name is Henry Quealy, and that's Henry is the name of my wife's cat that died, and her last name is Quealy. So she saw that and she started bawling. She hadn't seen it until she saw a print copy. Does that noise mean Dan's on? What is that noise?
I don't know.
No, that was a phone.
Oh, Jordan's just really unprofessional.
I am. No big deal.
Wow. So I'll tell you a funny story about Dan Piraro. Okay? Since we have time. Several years ago when I was living in LA, I got really drunk one night and I realized that Bizarro had some really heavy animal rights themes in it, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. So I went online and I emailed Dan. And I sent him an email and I was like, oh my God, I love you. I love that you do this. Yada, 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 yada. Big fanboy letter, right? Because I was drunk. I mean, this is way before I was sober and straight edge, and I was a total mess. Anyways, like a few weeks later is when I ended up moving to New York, and I picked up this really shitty job doing like door-to-door political canvassing for this environmental group. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you would think that I was stalking him because I actually ended up at his door. And he invited me in after I said I was doing this environmental canvassing, and I saw on his wall Bizarro art. And then he signed the petition, and I'm like, are you Dan Piraro from Bizarro? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I just wrote you this letter and blah, blah, blah. And he probably totally thought I was some like crazy, freaky stalker because, I mean, what are the frickin' odds, right? I mean, it was insane. So random, but it was absolutely innocent, I mean, it was crazy.
I'm going to ask him about that.
Then I was totally embarrassed because it was like, oh my God, he probably thinks I'm crazy. He's probably like changing the locks on his doors and buying a gun and,
Did he remember the letter at all?
Yeah, he totally remembered. It was literally like 2 weeks before. I mean, it was like not that much time between. So yeah, he totally remembered the letter because he responded to the letter.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. And then I felt like super freaking weird, It's like, because I mean, those odds are astronomical.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So, I mean, well, what are you going to do?
Well, anyways, we got to run now, so.
All right.
Thanks for taking the time talking for a second.
All right, talk to you later, guys.
Hey, check you. Bye.
See ya.
So how come you do it this way instead of just a phone call?
This is the easiest way to do it without when we do it with a phone call, sometimes we have some connection problems and a lot of breaking up.
Okay.
It's a lot more solid connection.
All right, fine by me.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. Kind of interesting, right? When we signed on, our friend Matt Miner, who created the Liberator comic that just barely came out, was on, and he told us this interesting story about you. Apparently quite a few years ago, he was reading your comics and was really drunk and wrote you like a fanboy letter. And like 2 weeks later, moved to New York and was doing canvassing for environmentalism and actually stopped at your apartment and you like invited him in. It was like this really weird coincidence. Like,
oh, that is weird.
Yeah.
I kind of vaguely, I don't think he told me who he was at the time, did he?
He was just a drunk kid back then.
Oh.
Yeah.
I do kind of remember letting some canvasser guy in for environmentalism, and I think I just sicked my wife on him, and I don't know.
Well, yeah, he just barely released the Liberator, which is an animal rights comic. So.
Oh, that sounds familiar, actually.
Yeah, it was a new
Black
Kickstarter.
Mask.
Yeah, Black Mask is putting it out. Just came out last week for the first issue.
Oh, how funny. Well, that's good. Good for him.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So, what got you into veganism?
Oh, that's right. You guys are vegan, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
We're the good ones.
Yes, you're the good kind of, yeah. I kind of forgot. I forgot who I was talking to and why, but now I remember.
Yeah.
I'll tell you quite honestly. I'm now going through a divorce with my second wife, but she's the one who got me into it. To some degree, I started dating her about 11 years ago, and or maybe 12 years ago, and she wasn't, she didn't insist on it or anything, but I knew that it was obviously a big thing in her life. It was very important to her. And so I was interested in what she was interested in. It's interesting how you can, when you meet somebody that you're romantically involved in, you suddenly sort of want to see the world through their eyes, so you see things differently than you would have. Because I had vegan friends before, but not particularly close friends. I didn't really know them well or anything. I just knew that they were vegan. And I knew what it was about and stuff, but I just sort of ignored it as something that hippies with too much spare time get into.
It's still true, though.
Well, hippies with too much spare time do get into it, but also other people as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So I started. I don't know. I just started reading the pamphlets and stuff that she had around the house, and then it started to make more and more sense to me. I actually sort of, for a little while, I kind of guiltily thought, I thought, well, gosh, this does seem kind of, it does seem like maybe I've been ignoring a big part of my own personal code of ethics by continuing to eat animals. And anyway, so this went on for a few months, and then she brought me to Farm Sanctuary in upstate New York. She asked me if I wanted to go there and spend the night at they have a cabin there on the property where you can spend the night. She just asked me if I wanted to go. I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. That sounds like fun. So I went up there, and just the very first day, the end of the first day, I became vegan just by meeting all the animals and realizing that they were every bit as sentient and affectionate and all of that as any cat or dog I'd ever known. And I certainly didn't believe in cruelty to cats and dogs, and so I just knew it was just one of those. A light came out of my head, and I thought, I can't do this. I can't justify my own moral code by eating these guys if it's not a matter of survival, which it clearly is not. So I quit, and that was that.
Was it a hard transition for you?
Excuse me. Hope you can edit that out. Was it difficult? It was not as difficult as I thought it would be. I think that's probably the best way to put it, because it was actually a scary thing to do, to just say, that's it, I'm not going to do this anymore one day, and just realize that whatever that last meal I had was the last thing. And at the time, I didn't plan on that happening, and so it's like I don't even remember what the last meal I had before that. But just to suddenly say goodbye to the way I'd been eating my whole life, and all in one fell swoop like that, it was scary. I thought, is this going to be as difficult as it was when I gave up smoking cigarettes all those years ago, or is it going to be as hard as it was when I kicked heroin? I never kicked heroin. I'm kidding.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm still using. No, I never did heroin, but I did quit smoking cigarettes, and it was a nightmare. It was just like a physically miserable nightmare. So I was afraid that it was going to be like that, but in fact, it wasn't. It was just more of a lifestyle of substitution rather than denial.
Yeah,
and since I was with a woman who was already vegan and had been for many years at that time, she already knew how to shop and cook and where to eat and all that kind of stuff. And so she just sort of showed me the way, and I'm indebted to her for that. It's been very gratifying. It's been very gratifying. I've never even come close to falling off the wagon. I will admit that I still, unlike probably most of my vegan friends, I still find barbecue. I still find that barbecuing smells amazingly good. My next door neighbors barbecue quite a bit in the summertime, and when I smell that, I just think, oh, that is just heavenly. Oh, that smell. But it's not like I want to rush out and do it. I just think, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go eat that. So I'll just, I'll barbecue myself some mock meat and just get over it. Whereas most of my vegan friends, they sort of really, they're like, oh, that's disgusting. I can't stand that smell. It's revolting. It's charring flesh. Yeah, it is. I know. I agree. The system behind it is disgusting. But you got to admit that smells good. That's why people do it. It just smells and tastes good. I think it's a mistake to deny that eating meat tastes good. I don't think any meat eater is going to ever believe or trust anything I say if I tell them that eating meat is disgusting, because it's not disgusting. It's how it gets there that's disgusting. It's what has to be done to get it onto your plate that's disgusting.
Yeah, I've always told people I didn't quit eating meat because I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just had this conversation yesterday with somebody. Yeah,
and I think that's important to acknowledge, especially to meat eaters, because they're not going to trust you if they sense that you're lying to them. It's sort of the way I raised my daughters. I have 2 adult daughters now, and I didn't tell them that drugs were bad. I told them, some drugs are dangerous, other drugs are not. Mm-hmm. All of these things we're talking about are illegal. So, it's like if I had told them that marijuana was bad and was going to lead to some kind of a horrible mistake in their life and a terrible, I don't know, whatever. Like when I was a kid, nobody ever differentiated between marijuana and heroin, for instance. To bring up heroin twice in a matter of 3 minutes, which is not a good thing to do in a public interview, but I'm doing it. If I were to, let's change that. If I were to, I was basically told that marijuana was lumped in the same thing with LSD. Mm-hmm. Marijuana, a natural drug that does not make you hallucinate or lose your mind, and LSD, which is a man-made drug that can cause any number of things depending on how it's concocted and how much of you take, etc. I was never told the difference, and I felt like if I did that to my kids, they won't believe me, because when I was a teenager and started smoking pot, I was like, this is not dangerous. So then I immediately just didn't believe anything my parents told me.
Yeah.
So, and I felt that way about my kids. So I told them, marijuana is not a bad thing. It's just that it's illegal, and you have to be careful about where you get it and how, if you get caught with it. And, you just got to be damn careful about things that are illegal. You don't want to end up in jail over something as stupid as pot. So, I was honest with them. And I feel that way about veganism too. It's not like I'm out to evangelize anybody, but when I'm talking about it, I don't lie and tell them that meat disgusts me, because where it comes from disgusts me. But actually having it, I can't pretend that the flavor or the smell isn't good, because it is.
How are your daughters with you becoming vegan?
They actually became vegan too.
Awesome.
Once again, because I raised them well and they believed what I told them. They knew that I was an honest guy who wasn't going to bullshit them. As soon as I became vegan, I wrote to them both. I guess one of them was in high school at the time. This was 11 or 12 years ago. So one of them was in high school and one of them was in college. And I basically said, you're not going to believe. I had probably heard the term factory farm, but I had no idea what it meant when I became vegan, when I went to Farm Sanctuary that day in 2002. So I just wrote to him and sent him a couple of links. Like, you're not going to believe where our food comes from. Look at this shit. Look at factory farms. Look at, all this, and I said, and plus I met I met these cows and sheep and pigs and goats and chickens, and they had different personalities, and they were every bit as sweet as our dogs, and and I just said, I can't do it anymore, and just wanted to give you the same information. And they both went, oh my, they both looked at it and just went, oh my God, neither can we, and they quit. Now, I think they both sort of fell on and off the wagon when it came to cheese and pizza, because one was in college and one was heading to college. And pizza is such a big part of college that they have fallen on and off the wagon. But as far as I know, they've never fallen off the wagon in terms of actually eating flesh. I don't think either of them ever have again.
Well, speaking about politics, I know you got some flack when you published something in support of gay marriage.
Were we talking about politics?
Well, veganism, drug rights, I guess. But,
drug rights. There you go. Okay, go ahead.
But I know you got some flack when you published something in support of gay marriage. Can you tell us more about that? And have you gotten any comments regarding your animal rights comics?
I've gotten one or two comments over the years. Yeah, every now and then some like utter bonehead will write to me. I mean, he's clearly just some Ted Nugent wannabe who lives in a trailer with a Confederate flag on the back of his Pinto or pickup truck or whatever. He's like those kind of guys. Occasionally will write to me, and they're basically only trying to offend me. They go into great description about how much they hunt and how much they love to eat meat, and like I care.
Yeah. What
that one guy does. But yeah, I've gotten a few things like that. And the gay rights thing is, I'm not a particularly political person anymore. I used to be very political and follow everything, and I wrote a book about the Bush administration. I mean, it was a satire, but it's not like I wrote some, political tome or anything. But I used to be into that stuff, but then I just got so discouraged with it. And the only two things that oddly enough, I really follow much in the press anymore, and I still don't even do that, but the two things that just really get me going are, three things, come to think of it, is the ag-gag bills, the gay rights, and marijuana legalization. Because they're all just so insanely simple and logical. They're just so clearly wrong. By any standard, they are wrong. To put someone in prison for marijuana is wrong. Marijuana is the Coors of recreational drugs. To deny a certain number of American citizens full rights because they happen to be attracted to somebody that you don't approve of is insanely wrong. It's just, you cannot defend it. And the ag-gag thing, if these factory farms were not doing something that they didn't want anyone to see, there would be no need for these bills. There'd be no need for these laws against showing what goes on inside of factory farms. So they're all just so black and white and so clearly idiotic and wrong that they just infuriate me.
I don't know if you knew, we just recently had in the state of Utah where we're at the first arrest for an ag-gag bill.
Yeah, one of my friends.
Yeah. Luckily, they got the charges dropped. But, it was the very first arrest in the United States, which happened actually like 2 miles from my house.
Holy cow. Yeah, I had a friend who went to prison because he ran a website, and he basically just ran a website about animal liberation kind of stuff. And because so many people that were, I guess because people who were breaking into places and breaking into labs and stealing animals and breaking into factory farms and filming them, because people like that were heavily dependent on his website, they actually they put him in jail. I think he spent 4 years in prison for being an environmental terrorist or some bullshit.
Was this friend a part of SHAC by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of those kids.
We know a lot of those kids.
Yeah, of course. Everybody knows more people than I do. I mean,
actually, Jordan just got out of prison.
I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he refused.
That's insane. I would personally, I commend you. I would rather die than go to jail. I can't imagine anything worse than being imprisoned.
It's not fun, but my morals mean more than.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. No, I get that. I totally get that. But I think if I got caught doing something that would end up in a lengthy prison term, and by lengthy I mean anything more than 3 days. I think I would just grab for the gun of the person trying to arrest me and just, accidentally let him turn it on me and kill me. I think I wouldn't be out to kill him, but I would just rather die than go to jail for even 3 days. I'm that terrified of jail. I just can't imagine.
It's really just boring when you talk to most people.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part about it.
I think it's improved from the stereotypes a lot.
I have the same fear of boredom. I'm serious. I would go stir crazy. That's what that term means.
Yeah.
Sure. So you said you were used to be really political. How was it being raised in such a conservative area and being more of this liberal leaning guy?
Hey, now there's an interesting question. It's one I was going to ask you guys. What are you doing in Utah? All places. That's exactly what I was going to ask you. I don't know. Fortunately, my parents, you know how it is when you're raised somewhere, you don't really know what it's like until you're an adult and you go other places. And you go, wow, that was a black abyss I was raised in. How did I not know that? But you don't know it because you're a kid, right? Mm-hmm. So, I was raised in small towns in Oklahoma. And my parents, fortunately, have always been liberal Democrats. Among the very few, they still live in Oklahoma, and they have very few Democratic friends. Most of their friends are Republicans, and they just don't talk about it. But but they were socially conservative. They didn't, my parents were products of the 1950s. They were high school sweethearts in the mid 50s and started having kids in the late 50s, and so they were against the whole kind of hippie liberation movement in the 60s. That to them was just the utter decay of society. So I did grow up in this very kind of conservative. My dad had a flat top, and I was not allowed to grow my hair any longer than a Marine until I was probably 15. I did get that sense that the world I was living in was much more conservative than what was going on in the outside world. But they actually have changed quite a bit over the years. I have an open-minded family. They tend to be intelligent, well-educated, and they have open minds. It sometimes takes them a while. They're not on, they weren't on the forefront of the free love movement by any means, but and they are certainly the reason that I got married at 21, which was probably the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. That's not the woman I'm divorcing now. I divorced the one at 21 a long time ago. It's my second divorce. I got married because basically I was raised with this, they were high school sweethearts. So I was just raised, and I was raised with this idea that you don't have sex until you're married. That it's some kind of a cardinal sin. They were Catholic, and they still are Catholic. And, they had this, but nowadays my parents in their late 70s would tell you that they would rather, when it comes to their grandkids, they'd rather see their grandkids live together before they commit to marriage, because they've seen what, the modern age, how catastrophic it can be to just get married to someone you've never even seen naked before.
Yes.
And then try to build a life with them. So anyway, I was not a virgin when I got married, but every time I had sex as a teenager, I felt horribly guilty. And so when I was 21, just as I was programmed, I just married the first woman I was horny for, to put it bluntly. I thought I was in love, and she thought she was in love, and she was kind of raised the same way. So we just got married, and about 3 years later, I guess we had a kid. And anyway, so we stuck it out for 16 years. But it was not she wasn't a bad person, and neither was I. We just weren't suited for each other, you know.
Yeah.
So that marriage fell apart. But when the kids were older, But anyway, does that answer your question? I don't remember what it was now.
It's fine.
Yeah, just growing up there, and you were saying, "What the hell are we doing here?" And I was just born here, and I'm used to it now.
Yeah,
like honestly.
Our families are both LDS Mormon. It's
Oh man,
yeah,
raised in that same environment of no sex before marriage.
very strict.
In fact, having a coffee maker at my house was pretty much a sin.
really?
Yeah, actually, they don't drink coffee, and so.
Oh, I see. I thought it was like some kind of a Amish idea about coffee makers, but it was because of the caffeine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They avoid caffeine.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. How did the Mormons ever come around to avoiding caffeine? What kind of a horrible thing happened with coffee way back in Joseph Smith's day that caused them to outlaw caffeine?
I don't necessarily think they ever did. I think they just kind of interpreted it that way down the line.
Yeah.
Like it said hot drinks, whatever that.
Oh, really? Hot drinks? Yeah, it probably just falls under the blanket. Just falls under the umbrella of too much fun. There's anything that is too pleasurable is bound to be wrong to certain kinds of people, and it might be where that came from. I don't know.
Reminds you of Footloose. And
no, you do get used to it. I go back to Oklahoma to visit every year. Most of my family still lives there, and I, as little as I have in common with the general populace, I feel comfortable there. It's where I was raised. I get those people. I just get them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I just feel comfortable there because I know exactly where I stand at any given moment, and so I know what you mean.
Well, and the great thing here is Salt Lake City in general is actually pretty liberal. Mm-hmm. It's everywhere else. It's once you get out of the city that it's really not. Mm-hmm. But the city itself has a really good liberal base, has a really good gay rights scene, has a really good because everyone here, you're either Mormon or you're not. So everyone who's not really bands together very well. Yeah.
So are you guys not Mormons anymore?
No.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, it's really strange because both of our families completely are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and all your siblings as well, pretty much, aside from my sister.
Yeah,
and so.
Yeah, well, my whole family is still Catholic, and they worry about me because I outed myself as atheist on my blog a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And I've been fairly outspoken about it since then. And they worry about it, but they still accept me, and they pray for me, which is nice. And they all believe that someday I will come back to the flock.
That's just like my parents. They won't accept that I'm an atheist. You're just not accepting Mormonism at the moment. Is how they view it.
Yeah, you'll come back.
Yeah, you'll come back.
You believe. I know you had a strong testimony as a kid.
Your mom just said that to you like a week ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, Mom, I don't.
Oh my!
How do your parents take your comics?
They're really they like them. I mean, they're extremely proud of me. They love my career and brag about me all the time. And my dad's they're actually both funny people. Everybody in my family has a good sense of humor. And my dad has a very quick wit, and so he likes to just take credit for my career. He basically just tells everybody he gets it from me. That's his favorite thing. My mother's always going, "Oh, you just wouldn't believe. He talks about you constantly, and every time he always tells them that he gets it from me. He gets it from me. You know your father." Yeah, I know. He's the guy. My dad's actually super sweet. He's the guy at parties who has memorized 85 different jokes and can just pull out a story joke at a moment's notice and tell it impeccably and get everybody laughing. He's just the joke teller at public gatherings of any kind.
That sounds kind of like my dad, and I would used to get so embarrassed when he'd just start going on a rant to some of my friends. But I love the guy.
Yeah, my dad was not that way when I was growing up. The poor guy he actually had really screwed up chemicals, and he was a super sweet guy that was imprisoned in the body of an asshole until the invention of antidepressants, and then overnight he was just almost always a super sweet guy. And it was so gratifying to see, because I knew that was who he wanted to be all along, but he just couldn't. And I had the same problems when I was a really sweet kid, and when I got to be about 18, 20 years old or something, my demeanor, or just my entire outlook on life just became very dark, and I struggled with depression for years. And it wasn't until I got divorced in my early 30s or mid 30s, I guess. I got divorced, and I had so much trouble dealing with it, and I was going to a therapist, and he finally said, you'd be an excellent candidate for antidepressants. And I was like, that stuff's good for my dad, but I don't need a pharmaceutical solution to my problems. He goes, no, that's not what it's about. So he sort of insisted that I look into it and give it a try, and as soon as it kicked in, I thought, oh my God, what have I been doing? How many years have I wasted with this giant boulder hanging over my head for no good reason? And I totally that was the point at which I totally understood my father, and it was. I'm still on them to this day. I'll probably will be for the rest of my life. But it's the only pharmaceutical I take. I can't stand pharmaceuticals. I wish I didn't have to take these. I've tried to get off them several times, various other kind of new age remedies, but my chemicals are just so screwy. I can't do it.
Well, it's amazing to me the stigma that's still around today with having to take medications for mental illness and things like that. Like, there's nothing, it's just and especially even with like just basic therapy, like everyone should go to a damn therapist.
I love going. I've never been embarrassed about any of this stuff. I love going to therapy. I do it. I've done it. I don't know, a bunch of different times in my adult life. When I have a specific problem, I'll go to therapy, and sometimes it takes a month, sometimes it takes 6 months or a year, but solve the problem. Stop going, save my money, wait till the next problem comes up. But it's nothing better. It's great.
Oh, it totally
is. It's fantastic to be able to tell an educated you figure it out, because they have no stake in it. You really can't do that with your friends and family, because they have some stake. They want to continue to have a relationship with you after you're done telling them. So they can't be totally honest. I love therapy. I love my antidepressants, and I don't care who knows it. The bottom line is I'm a happy and what's the other word when you functional. I'm a happy and functional adult, and who cares how I got there, right?
True. Yeah, totally true. I just wish I could get there.
What was that?
I just wish I could become a functioning adult.
Yeah, you might eventually. You never know. It could happen.
So one thing I really love about your comics are the hidden symbols inside of them. Can you explain kind of what got you to do that and the meaning behind some of them?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. People are usually disappointed in the actual story behind all of this, because they want it to have some grand, complex, important message, or something very funny and satirical or something. But in truth, like I was saying earlier, I have a fear of boredom, hence my fear of jail. And any job, no matter how much fun it is, if you do the same thing every day, you get a little bit bored with it, And so writing and drawing cartoons for all these years, it became something of a routine. And one day, this was actually in the mid-'90s, I think, I was drawing a cartoon, and I was just kind of bored with myself and my career, and I thought, I'm going to throw a little upside-down bird in the background and see if anybody notices. I was just entertaining myself, really. As a kid, I was a big fan of Highlights magazine and those games where you have to find the hidden this, that, and the other thing, a whole list of stuff that's hidden in the picture, Love that kind of stuff when I was a kid. So I threw one in there. And as soon as the thing ran in the paper, I started getting emails from people saying, I saw this upside down bird. Well, actually, you know what I did is I did it more than once. I didn't just do it once. I did it, in like an entire batch of cartoons. So like for an entire month, this upside down bird was disappearing here and there in various cartoons. And so I immediately started getting these emails from people asking, what does it mean? This is fascinating. Am I the only one who's noticed? Has anybody else written to you about this? What's going on? So people dig this as much as I do. So I just started adding more symbols. And then once I had about I don't know, about 8 or 9 of them, I thought, what I should do is create a website that with long involved philosophical bullshit about what each one means. And so I created that, and it's posted online. I don't know if it's my old website is just bizarro.com, mm-hmm. and on the home page is a little link that says symbol secrets. And if you click on that, then it gives you this long, ridiculous explanation of what every symbol means, and none of it's true. The bottom line is, I just do it to entertain myself, and my readers like it too. People complain when I don't have any symbols in there, and the thing is, a lot of times, because as I've gotten further into my career and busier with other projects and things, I find that I have less time to draw these elaborate backgrounds that I used to draw, where it was really easy to hide the symbols. So sometimes if it's just two people talking and there is no visual gag, it's really the entire gag sits in the cartoon balloon, in the words. I won't bother to draw a background. I won't bother to put symbols in there. And sometimes people complain about that. It's like, what am I going to just have a giant rabbit in the background or a big piece of pie sitting on the guy's shoulder while he says something? Because if you do that, then the people who have never noticed the symbols will all go, "Why is this pie on his shoulder?" Like every now and then, I'll have a particularly popular cartoon, like some kind of a cartoon that gets forwarded a lot, just because of whatever the content of it is. People just like this one joke about golf or whatever, and so every golfer in the country is Facebooking it. And suddenly, I'll start to get all these emails like, "What is the pie on the floor about?" I'm like, I do that all the time. Just ignore it. It has nothing to do with the joke. I just do it all the time.
I love that it's just, there's not this deep philosophical meaning. I don't know why people wouldn't love that. I love that even more than having these really big complex things.
Yeah, well, I do too. I like randomness. I like just random out of place things. I don't know why. I've always found that entertaining. And so yeah, that's I find it fun to do just for that reason. I just amusing myself. That's really kind of all there is to it.
What's the most trouble you've gotten in with your comics?
Oh, during both of W's campaigns, run-ups to both of his elections, and elections is in quotation marks. I did some pretty overtly political cartoons, and because I just couldn't believe that the country was really going to elect this guy, and then they did, and then the second time around in 2004, I really did a lot of political stuff. So I said, surely we're not going to elect this guy again. That was what he's like, and I went and did it again. But anyway, so yeah, I did a few, and I lost some papers, like small town conservative area kind of papers, because so many people wrote in and complained that the newspaper editor just thought, well, this is taking up my whole day writing apology notes to all these conservative readers, and so I'm just going to get rid of this cartoon to save myself the trouble next time. So I lost some cartoons. I lost some clients, but and that's as close to going to jail as I've ever gone, because I was standing up for my principles. I knew that I was going to get into trouble, a little bit of trouble. Because, see, the deal is with cartoons, the newspaper industry and cartoons, is that, they have editorial cartoons and then they have funny cartoons. And they don't put them on the same page. And people have come to expect that. A cartoon that, the only political cartoon that ever got onto the funny pages was Doonesbury. And then later Mallard Fillmore, which is just a sort of a joke of a right-wing copy of Doonesbury. But Doonesbury was the first one to do that. And a lot of people were furious about that, because they were like, don't put left-leaning political ideas on the funny pages. I read the funny pages to laugh. If you want to say that kind of stuff, then put it on the editorial. And so a lot of people did run Doonesbury on the editorial pages for that very reason. So there's a big division. So when a newspaper editor buys a cartoon feature, because basically these syndication companies that put these out, they go around to all the newspapers and sell them one by one to whoever person is in charge of that paper's funny pages. And, so they try to pick the right cartoons. And when they pick one for humor, they don't want it to suddenly turn into a political cartoon, because it's not what they bought. So I was kind of doing that. I was crossing over sort of heavily. And I remember, in fact, it might have even been, I think this might have been the one that got me fired, was from a few papers, was I had a picture of kind of ancient Greece with some, it was like outdoor landscape sort of thing with some temples in the background and whatever. And we had Plato sitting on like a broken column, and then across from him is sort of this fat, effeminate, balding guy with glasses. And he says, fat, effeminate, balding guy with glasses, who's wearing a modern-day suit and tie, not a toga like Plato was. So he says to Plato, but surely, I hope I can remember this exactly, but surely you agree that truth can be created by the repetition of a lie. And at the bottom it said, Karl Rove and Plato. Oh my God. So I think that was the one, pretty sure that was the one that got me canceled in a few papers.
And that's not even satire.
Yeah, I know, it's truth. I mean, it's totally true. It's, I mean, it was. I could have used. I would have used Rupert Murdoch if I thought people knew what he looked like. But, I mean, clearly that was just what was going on, and they had learned that, the Republicans had learned that at some point, that if you repeat a lie often enough and buy an entire television network and repeat that lie constantly, it just becomes the truth. It doesn't matter if it ever happened. Or if it ever will happen, it becomes the truth. I just thought that might be something that Plato would be interested in, were he still alive, that you could actually create truth out of repeating a lie often enough. So anyway, that was my cartoon.
So that's a good one. That's a good one, yeah.
I like it. I still like it after all these years, which isn't always true about that kind of thing. But in this case, I do still like it. Because at some point, people will forget. I hope people will forget. 50 or 100 years from now, they'll forget who Karl Rove was, and they won't have any idea what that cartoon meant. If they're even looking at my cartoons 100 years from now, and why would they be, come to think of it?
One of my favorites, the hamburger helper that's breaking into the Acme Meat Company. It's just funny. It's subtle but funny.
Yeah, that was probably that was one of the first efforts of mine to do an animal rights joke. When I first became vegan, because I have to write a cartoon a day, 365 days a year after year after year, without ceasing. There's no vacation or anything involved in this career, and so because I had to do that, anything that was on my mind became a certain amount of, I would just look for, I was always looking for a new way to come up with a gag, right? Mm-hmm. So because animal rights had suddenly become important to me, I was trying to think of ways to express those in jokes, but it's like writing cartoons about animal cruelty is like trying to write cartoons about childhood cancer. It's just not funny. Yeah. It's a very difficult thing to get a handle on, and so it took me a while. I did a few little efforts here and there, but they didn't really have any kind of meaning or sting to them. They were just sort of amusing, and most people would probably totally miss the point anyway, and that kind of thing. But that cartoon, I was really happy when I came up with that cartoon, because it would be funny to non-vegetarian, non-vegan types, but it also had a kind of a clear message to it. So I was proud of that one. I still like that one after all these years.
So are there some that you're disappointed in, you'd say, then?
Yeah, I don't commit those kind of things to memory because it's too painful. But yeah, there's stuff that I look at later. I mean, any creative person is like that. You look at old paintings or old novels or old songs, and you think, oh gosh, I can't believe I tried to peddle that on the public. It's just you tend to be, creative types are very critical of their own work, and so I look at some of my older stuff, and it just makes me cringe. But whatever, I will sometimes mention this doing a public talk or doing a in my blog or something, and other people always go, "Oh no, I love that one. I still like it." Other people don't notice; they're not as critical of. Partly because they don't care as much about what I do as I do, but they're not as critical. So I figure I'm probably just just being hard on myself.
So, do you typically stockpile like a whole bunch of them?
Oh heavens, no!
No?
I'm always just a few hours behind deadline.
Oh, wow.
I've been doing this since '86, and I'm not great at math. So you tell me how many years that is. It's 20-something years. It's like 27 or 8 years or something.
26, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I started in '85, kind of thing, the January of '85. So I am at like 28 years.
Wow.
Anyway, and yeah, for 28 years, I've been just like right at or a few hours behind deadline every single week. So no, I don't stockpile. Every now and then I'll be able to work ahead, get ahead enough to take a week off and go on vacation or something. But then the second I get back, I gotta just hit the ground running to try to catch up with, because I'll be right back on deadline again. That's just the way. That's the way most syndicated cartoonists work. There are some, like the kind of, I run the risk. Better be careful how I say this because these guys are all my colleagues. But these sort of the kind of cartoons that have regular characters and sort of very loose storylines. They're about families and stuff, and they're not particularly funny every day anyway. Mm-hmm. Those guys tend to get ahead. Month, 3 months, 6 months, 5 years, whatever. Because it's just a whole lot easier just to draw something barely amusing every day with the exact same characters, And that's not true of all cartoons with the same characters. Get Fuzzy is a cartoon with the same characters, and for my money, that guy's as funny. Darby Connolly's as funny now as he was when he started. There are people who manage it, but a lot of the ancient strips that have just been around forever that kind of were never that funny in the first place, and now they're even less so. Those kind of guys get way ahead. They also hire big crews of people to write and draw them for them too, because they're millionaires. I'm not in that millionaire club, so I mostly do it all myself.
So what's been the biggest change in doing the syndicated comics for so long, like in the industry for you?
Well, I guess really the biggest change in my career has been computers. There was no, when I started in '85, people didn't have computers in their homes. So I had to draw everything, I drew everything by hand and would send them, in the old days you used to actually send your cartoons, your drawings to the syndicate and they would print them up. When I started, I was affiliated with a photostat shop. I was doing commercial art, and we had a photostat. I don't know, does anybody even make photostats anymore? It was kind of like a fancy photograph that, you photograph under glass. So I used to photostat my stuff and send them in. Okay. And then the coloring, when I would have to try to color the Sundays and stuff, that was all done. That was really strange. You wouldn't even believe it. That was done. It was they gave you this big poster full of little squares of colors that faded slowly from one color to the next, like a rainbow of colors. And you were supposed to designate each shape with a CMYK number. And, so you'd Xerox your cartoon and then designate the shirt is this color and the pants is, the pants are 245 and the shirt is 891 and, on like this. And then I was always, even for early on, I was trying to do complicated shadows and lighting effects and stuff. And so I would just guess at this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea what it would look like until it came out in the paper 4 to 6 weeks later, because that's the lead time that you give it to them before it goes to print. In syndicate, in like comedy stuff, editorial guys do it overnight, but the rest of us are like 4 to 6 weeks ahead when we write something that doesn't show up in the paper for a month or more. So, I would have to wait a month or more to see if I got the effect I wanted. And sometimes it worked and oftentimes it didn't. So it was a very slow learning process. And then in the 90s, I got a computer and Photoshop and I started doing the coloring myself and I started scanning the cartoons into the computer myself and making corrections and things instead of having to redraw something and paste it on top or white it out and redraw it and all that crazy stuff you had to do. It's really the difference in night and day. It's like the difference between chiseling in stone and having a typewriter. an unbelievable difference. And then industry-wise, of course, another big difference is that there was no internet, so now everybody can see so many more people see my work, but at the same time, they see it for free. So that's a big problem in the syndicated cartoon industry is how, as newspapers continue to post their content online for free and fewer people buy newspapers, how are the newspapers going to survive? Well, a lot of them are not. They're failing bit by bit, and there goes my income. So finding a way to get paid for cartoons online when everybody's used to getting anything they want for free online is it's a big problem. Nobody's sure how that's going to work out in the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, or however long it takes,
Wow, definitely.
I know newspapers are going down, but you don't think about everything else that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the people that provide the content for newspapers. Yeah, it's newspaper journalists there are far fewer journalists now than there used to be. All columnists, all those people, unless you can sell, when you put all your stuff in books, and you sell those, and people don't really buy books anymore either because they can get everything online for free. So it's hard to sell cartoon books either. You can, but I've never made much money off of cartoon books. It's just a different world. It's the what do they call it? E-economy or something? What do they call that? Online economy.
E-commerce.
It's just totally different.
Yeah. Well, I know that you were on a very strict time today, so I want to thank you for coming and sitting down with us. It was a lot of fun. How can people get in contact with you? Do you have social media, your website? How would you like to put yourself out there?
Well, thanks for reminding me, because I always forget that sort of stuff. No wonder I'm having trouble making a living on the internet. I actually have a daily blog, which, quite frankly, is hilarious and thought-provoking. So you're going to want to go there, and that is bizarrocomics.com. And then I got a Facebook page. I think it's Dan Piraro Bizarro Comics is my Facebook page. And I have I've forgotten what my twat is on Twitter. It's Twitter. It's Piraro Bizarro or Bizarro Piraro, one of those two. I'm on Twitter as well. But, so yeah, I'm on all those things.
Awesome.
Google. I'm worth a Google, as they say.
I'm worth a Google.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I had a lot of fun with you guys. Thanks for calling.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
no problem. Thank you again.
Have a wonderful night.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No.
Do you believe in ghosts?
That's kind of an interesting question. If you were just to say, do you believe in ghosts? My first initial response would be yes. But I think probably a more accurate answer to that is, when I think about it, is I have no reason not to believe in ghosts.
That's the same reason I don't believe in ghosts.
Yeah, I have no...
And I think that that's where we are stuck in the world, is because it is in between all of us. In other words, there's all the people, there's no one that believes in ghosts can come up with the direct evidence to prove that they're there, and no one that doesn't believe in ghosts can prove that they're not.
Well, it's like proving a negative. You can't.
And so it's that's why you have the same reason for not believing him as I do believing in him.
Yeah, I think aliens people feel the same way too.
But that's the weird thing. I believe in aliens.
I believe that there's extraterrestrial life. I don't think they've ever been here.
Oh no, I thought we were talking about borders and stuff.
Oh, I mean, I believe in illegals.
No, just kidding. Just kidding. No. That's next week's poll.
Man, taking everything out of this room is echoey.
Mm-hmm.
It's way echoey.
Yeah, we don't have any soundproofing. We're moving studios.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Relocating.
So, do you believe that ghosts are just on a parallel dimension, or is it a total? What do you? When you said in between, I thought you were going to be in between dimensions. That's where I thought you were going with it.
I actually think that it can be. I mean, I don't have the answers. I've never seen an apparition.
What do you think of people who say they've seen apparitions?
I think most of them are silly.
That's a nice way of saying crackpots.
Daffy, a little bit, and probably more so than anything, they're probably just totally normal.
So my mom.
They just like telling a fun story.
What about all the TV shows?
Yeah.
Because you follow them. I know you follow them. I should probably introduce you.
I follow the shows because they're fun. I don't take one of them seriously.
Okay.
And but I think that the technology that they're trying to bring into it and stuff is a lot of fun. People have believed in ghosts since the beginning of time, and I think that with today's technology, we're just kind of coming to an area where we're starting to open up some doors, and I think that everyone has different perceptions of what they're finding in those doors, and I think that as we get more and more into it, that we're going to find out probably that the answers are a lot different than what they're thinking they really are.
Okay.
I don't believe that that it is exactly the way that we've always believed, and people have a hard time straying from that. But I can't believe that we have even begun to know everything that's out there.
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
But it looks like 23% of the people is just a flat out yes. They believe in ghosts. Mm-hmm. 77 said no, and there was no maybes. I thought there'd be more maybes. I thought most people would say maybe. I don't know, maybe.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, and it all depends on why you believe in ghosts and why you don't believe in ghosts.
Do you think it takes like an experience to really believe?
For me, it did.
What was your experience?
Well, like I say, I've never seen an apparition. I watch some of these shows, and I'm waiting to see a lady in white walking across the cemetery. Never seen it. Never seen a Confederate soldier marching across the battlefield. Never seen any of those types of things.
That'd be really weird especially if you weren't on a battlefield. Like,
you know, and I'm not totally discounting those people that say that they have.
They could have smoked peyote and really believe it.
I believe sometimes that they're seeing something that maybe they're misidentifying, or maybe they don't understand. I'm not opposed to the idea of living in different dimensions. I'm not opposed to that. I don't know enough about it to really have a strong belief, but
Are you familiar with what's going on right now with the Large Hadron Collider, where they're actually trying to prove the existence of other dimensions and how they're doing that?
I've not followed it religiously at all, but I've heard about it.
It's incredible. So basically what they're doing is they're taking two atoms and colliding them, like the collider does. But what's happening is though that as they're monitoring the release of energy, and since energy can't be created or destroyed, they should have the exact same amount of energy from the time when they did it beforehand at the after. What they're finding out is that they're losing minuscule amounts of energy, but since they can't be destroyed, where is it going? Has to be. So their hypothesis is that the force is creating it to go into one of the other dimensions. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And like I say, I think we're just at a threshold of starting to understand some of these things, and I think that answers will be coming faster than we think. But I think that as of right now, our understanding of it, they're taking new technology and new avenues and trying to explain it with old ideas.
And I think from a religious standpoint, it could be spirits or something like that. You know what I mean? But from a scientific standpoint, it might be a different dimension. It might be, if people are claiming to see these things, maybe it's something that we just don't comprehend. They're saying that we're stacked upon multiple tiers of our universe. It's just one thing and a vast amount of many.
In the multiverse.
Yeah. And so, like, maybe it's a theory that we just don't comprehend. If it really exists,
I also feel too that you don't have to separate everything. When you say there's the view of the spiritual with religious people and so forth, and the scientific view, I think personally that as we learn more and more and more, we're going to find a lot of those things come together. That maybe the whole spiritual view was an explanation of the scientific view, just didn't know how to explain it.
So, you've had quite a few experiences. Growing up with you, I've heard a lot.
I've had
most of them fake.
This is Jeremy's dad.
Yeah, I should introduce you. This is my father.
Yeah.
I came from his loins.
And I'm here to tell you that I am not to blame for anything what he has turned out to be.
It's all my mom.
It's all his mom.
So you're super disappointed in him.
So you're super disappointed. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't blame you.
No word. Yeah, that's complete silence.
I don't blame you.
I don't blame him either.
He did cause you a lot of grief.
Okay, you said that I've had a lot of experiences. I haven't had a ton of experiences. I've had experiences in my life that I cannot explain. And it is very easy for me to say that it is of a paranormal nature.
Okay.
And that's all I can say.
What's your favorite one?
Well, one that happened to me as a little kid that I won't go into because no one knows that story, but it's what made me afraid of paranormal things.
Hold on. You can't just start a story and not go.
No, it was an explanation of as a young kid I was very, very, very scared of paranormal to the point of if there was even anything spooky on a commercial on TV, I couldn't sleep for a couple nights. And
I was the same way because you guys used to watch what was that TV
Tales
show?
from the Crypt?
It was Scully.
Oh, X-Files.
Oh. And it scared the crap out of me all the time. And I remember thinking as a little kid, my parents should not be letting me watch this.
I watched it all the time too. I loved that show.
I look back at it now, not that they were, you guys weren't in the wrong for letting a kid watch it. I'm not saying that. I just remember it, as a kid, scared the bejesus out of me.
And back when I was a younger kid, we only had 3 channels on TV, 2, 4, and 5.
So scarier and holding
back in my day.
Every
back in my day, I walked to school uphill both ways.
Every Friday night, you had the choice of either watching Johnny Carson on Channel 2, Nightmare on Channel 4, or Frightmare on Channel 5. And,
all pretty scary.
Yeah.
Johnny Carson is special.
And of course, I was the youngest kid in the family, and my brothers and sisters loved watching Nightmare and Frightmare, and I couldn't be in the same room.
So what was this experience? I don't even know this story.
No, my wife is probably the only one that knows the story, but it is why I got scared of it. But
so now you can share it with everyone.
But now this is an experience that happened to me when I was probably
it's like therapy.
I was only 12 years old.
Okay.
And it scared me so bad that I've gone through periods of my life of denial. I've gone through periods of my life trying to explain it away and so forth, to the point to where I started watching all the scary shows to try and cure myself of it.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of the reasons why I follow the ghost stories too, because now all of a sudden that stuff has become fun to me now, and I've used that as a tool to try and overcome some of my fears.
See, I still hate horror. I don't watch horror. I'm not a fan. I don't, period.
It doesn't scare me. I just am not interested in it most of the time.
Yeah.
Mari loves it.
Okay, so what happened?
I was 12 years old, about 3 houses down from where I lived. My best friend, he was my age. He had a brother that was just about a year younger than us, and we hung out together. His dad had just gotten transferred to Montana, and this was the last weekend that they were going to be in town. So we got the opportunity of, and permission from parents and everything. We were going to have a little camp out in the backyard. Pitched a little scout tent. It only held 2 people, but we squeezed 3 people into it. And we were just out there, and we started messing around. Probably dealing with stuff that, as I look at it today, that I shouldn't have delved into. Before we even went out, we were playing with Ouija board, doing stuff like that, and as stupid kids, we were kind of challenging things. It's just like, prove to us that you're real, and of course we had no even understanding or even feelings of whether it was real or not. We weren't really looking for anything. We were just screwing around. And anyway, and you've probably heard this story.
It sounds familiar.
In a story that I wrote, because I wrote a story about the Ghost of Winter Quarters, and it was a fictional story.
Yeah.
But I took my experience and put it into the story.
The kernel of truth.
And so it was easy for me to write that way because I had all the feelings and emotions as I wrote it. But anyway, so we were in the tent messing around and everything and just talking, and it seemed like it got really windy, and the sides of the tent were battering back and forth, and it wasn't dark. We're in a neighborhood, and so there was lights you could see, and there was no shadows or anything hitting the tent. But so we just figured it was very windy, and the canvas was battering around a lot. And finally, we started settling down and going to sleep, and the wind just really kept picking up. If it was wind, I don't know, because at some point I was in the middle, and at some point it went dead silent. Everything was very calm, and as soon as it got calm, the zipper on the tent just went flying straight up, and I was seized by my ankle and dragged out of the tent. And I was on my back, and as I got outside of the tent, I twisted to try and stop myself from being dragged, and tried to grab hold of the grass, whatever I could get hold of, and I just didn't really feel like I had any strength towards it. I turned over on my back, and there was nothing there. There was nothing. I could see around, and there wasn't any bully kid that had grabbed my ankle and dragged me out. And I started kicking wildly with my other foot, and I broke loose, and immediately I came out of the bag. The bag ended up about 6 feet farther across the yard, and I was laying there on the grass, and there was nothing out there. Turned around, my 2 friends were standing there in the tent looking at the same thing. And that was the end of that night. And we ended up going in, and we kind of had tried to figure out within ourselves what had happened. It was late. His parents were asleep. And we decided that we wouldn't talk about it.
That's pretty experience. Yeah,
totally. At that point, I became very, very fearful of the paranormal. Not necessarily ghosts. I just things that I didn't understand, I was afraid of. So, for years later, I, as an adult, I kept kind of putting myself out there to try and prove that none of this exists.
Okay.
And then I've had a few experiences.
Okay.
And so that experience led to you writing a story?
You said?
Oh, no. Me and a very good friend of mine, Mike Fair, we spent 7 years writing a book on the ghost towns of Utah.
Yeah.
And we traveled all over. And the reason it took so many years is it was a photographic journal. And we were taking all the old photographs from the Historical Society, and then we were finding exactly where the photographer would have stood, and took pictures now, how it exists, and to have the before and afters. And so had nothing to do with ghosts, had nothing to do with paranormal. It was strictly a book, and our research was on history of the ghost towns of Utah.
And that story was the Winter Quarter story, right?
And we had an experience at Winter Quarters.
DB Bills, Darwin Bills, right?
Oh no, that was a different one.
Was that a different one?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we had an experience at Winter Quarters that really freaked me out. It was just weird. We weren't searching for anything. We weren't looking for any ghosts. We just had an experience. And when you look at all of the things that are on television today and all the ghost movies and everything, anything that has happened to me seems very, very simple. And so you tell somebody, and they go, "Well, yeah, that happened on Ghost Hunters 10 times this past week," you know. And but when it happens to you, it's a different story.
Yeah, but all I get when I watch those shows is some crazy guy going, "What was that? There was something over there."
Yeah,
I'm going to challenge this ghost. I challenge. It's nothing.
What was that chair that knocking?
And that's exactly why I'm really jealous of them, because can you imagine how much money they're making just by doing that?
I don't know. Their vehicles don't seem that good.
I'm pretty sure they make pretty good money.
They spend it all on the equipment that they use.
Their fancy equipment.
Yeah. I mean, just look how much money you guys are rolling in.
It's so true. There's so much money to be made in podcasting.
Yeah, we're totally not losing anything.
Yeah. Let's not talk about that.
I actually tried to go and find Winter Quarters after Jeremy told me about it.
Yeah.
And we kind of got lost. We saw the general stores and all that other cool stuff up there, like
the two-walled Wasatch store.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, that's
about it.
That's about it up there
until you get to the mine.
Yeah, and so we started hiking up there, and we got stopped and asked what we were doing, and they're like, "We're just trying to find Winter Quarters," and they're like, "You're way out of the way." Mm-hmm. So I think we just got lost, and so we just kind of gave up and went to another one that was a little bit farther down that had like I can't even remember where it was, but I just remember a big building with a window at the top, and then a whole bunch of other small house, like...
That'd be Frisco?
Might have been Frisco.
Frisco has a lot of buildings still.
You talking about down south?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the two towns that I basically have had an experience in that just was a little bit weird was Frisco and Winter Quarters. Those are the two towns. And it's kind of funny because... like I say, it depends on what your feelings are, but I have a strong belief in life after death. And I have, as we've gone to all of the different ghost towns, there are specific feelings that you have when you go in. And I can't explain that except that it's just a feeling. But, we'll go in and we'll have feelings of just total sadness or despair, have feelings of...
How much of that do you think could be brought on just by knowing some of the history in the towns? Because some of that history is so brutal.
Absolutely, and that's why I don't really bring a lot of that into
Not discounting anything,
right.
Just,
But the one thing that was interesting about that, though, is that whenever we did go into a town and just basically really had no feelings whatsoever, there was never ever a cemetery of any kind there, of anybody that had ever passed away while they were there.
I've never gotten weird feelings around cemeteries, but I hate cemeteries in the idea that it's a waste of land. So
I always felt weird walking over the graves knowing that there was dead people underneath me.
I did a little
yeah,
bit,
but not anymore.
But I mean, that stopped. I mean, when you would take us to go,
If you want to talk about a waste of land, in that same thought,
Oh,
go
wow.
to like Queens, New York. You know,
Would you have the largest cemetery?
those cemeteries
Yeah.
there and everything take blocks and blocks and blocks, you know, and they're the spookiest looking cemeteries you'll ever set.
Yeah,
eyes on.
those ones do get spooky.
And you know, but the ones that I've experienced in researching the ghost towns, you're talking about plots of land out in the middle
Well,
of the
I know,
desert
I know.
that
They're literally nothing.
yeah, you
Yeah.
have to search just to even find them.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you want to hear what happened.
Yeah.
Winter quarters. That's a very well documented one. In fact, it's kind of pissed me off sometimes because I had this experience there, and I wrote it down, and I told people and everything. And then all of a sudden, I'm online one day, and this jerk is telling my story, and I'm like, he got hold of my story, and he's claiming it. But then as I started reading it, I all of a sudden realized, no, he just had the same exact experience as I did.
The only thing
And,
that's ever made me mad about winter quarters is that I know a lot of it's the actual history isn't the real history, only from your work.
Right. We were researching the town, and just to give you an idea, Winter Quarters was the site of the largest mining disaster in Western history.
1901?
1900, May 1st.
1900, sorry.
And they were trying to break a record for the company. And breaking this record would have meant big bonuses and everything. And so this particular day, many of the miners had took their kids down in the mines with them. And so,
this is way before child labor laws.
yes, exactly. And so there were kids, 12, 14 up down there working with their dads trying to break this record.
And get black lung.
And they didn't normally work down there. This was just to break a record.
Yeah.
And there was a powder keg explosion deep in the number 4 mine. They couldn't get the fires out. They didn't have the technology then.
They still haven't, if I'm correct.
And there's still, there are still spots in the ground up on the mountain that snow won't stick to. But they did the best they could bringing bodies out, and they quit bringing them out at 200. The mistake that the state made was that they made the official count at 200, and said there was nobody else in there, rather than just the truth that it was too dangerous. We have proven in our research that there was at least 265 people in there. Families were complaining, trying to get answers, and the state just blew them off and says no.
And that's one thing that's always bothered me, is because you still look up the history today, and everywhere it says is 200 people lost their lives.
Right.
And they just leave it at that. And you're like, well, no, there's a good amount of people still in there.
That never, right. And so we were just trying to get the history straight and trying to figure out what's going on. But one day that we got up in there, we were photographing, just as I was saying, trying to figure out the steps of the old photographers. We were photographing that Wasatch store, and as we had the cameras all set up and we're shooting, we heard up on the mountain there at this gulch, this voice come down. And it was like talking. And it seemed like it was just far enough away that I couldn't understand what it was saying. But it was talking, and then all of a sudden it went into a song. And then after a song, he just busted out laughing and stuff. And so all of my thoughts on trying to figure out what it was, you're going like, okay, it could be wind coming down, it could cause all these sounds. But what finally got me to believe that, no, this is a real person, is that there were actual structured sentences being made, and actual song and actual laughter, of which I could not figure out how just wind coming down a canyon is going to create all that. And we weren't looking for ghosts. What unnerved me was that there was a real person up there.
Yeah, you're in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere, and with the singing and everything else, he's probably drunk, and who knows what else.
And if you're in that area drunk, you're going to be armed.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we went up the canyon just a little bit more, and it stopped, and we came back down, and it started, And as we were moving around, it became very evident that the voice was directed at us. And so that was when I became very unnerved. I wanted to get out of there because I couldn't see who it was. They could see me. I didn't know the situation. I would have much rather it be a ghost than a real person. But I was thinking real person, I'm out of here. And so we left. I told that experience to my father. He worked with a gentleman by the name of Cleon, who was from Schofield, which is a little town down at the bottom of the waters.
By Schofield Reservoir.
And I told him the story, and he says, well, I'm going to talk to Cleon and ask him about it. So the next week, when we were up visiting my parents, my dad says, hey, I talked to Cleon. And I says, hey, are you familiar with Winter Quarters? And Cleon says, oh, yeah, you bet. And he says, oh, my son was up there just a couple weeks ago. And he goes, oh, did he hear the voice? And so my dad was really excited to tell me that story. And so then I got really interested, going like, well, what is that? And Cleon says, yeah, all the time while he was growing up, him and his friends, they would go up there and try and figure out where that voice is coming from. As soon as the voices start talking to him, it scared them and they left. They never really figured it out. So anyway, I, not being a very brave person, I put together a group of people to go back up there. I wanted to make sure that there was a good amount of people. I wanted some people that were slower than me, just in case I got in trouble, and so forth. But anyway, we had a good group of people going up. We had video cameras. We had all kinds of stuff. And just to kind of explain, during this time, I had been researching the town, and on the official report that is actually printed, you can find it at the Utah Historical Society, it talks about, in the official report, that shortly afterwards, up to 40 families moved out because of so-called paranormal activity. They were seeing lights down in the cemetery on different tombstones. They said that after they'd sealed off the number 4 mine, they reopened the number 1 mine, and so they were working still. And it was a working mine for another 20 years. But they said that there were horse-drawn ore cars, and they says that people claimed that as they were coming towards the entrance that there would be apparitions sitting with them on the ore cars and then disappear when they got to the entrance and so forth. But the thing that kind of curled my hair was, and then it says, and then many people threw up their jobs from all the voices and everything that were coming down from the gulch. Well, as I looked at the topo map, and I didn't even really understand everything yet about this town, that gulch where we were hearing the voice was the number 4 mine gulch. So that's what we were going back to. We were going to go back to find out where this voice was coming from. We started climbing the gulch, and we were hearing the voice. Harold Skousen had his video camera. Back then, there was nothing like your
it's
iPhone.
A briefcase.
This was like on his shoulder with
yeah.
And but anyway, and whatever we were hearing, we couldn't hear on the recording. Yeah, duh. It sounds like that's typical. But we couldn't. But we have it all on video. But I can't hear any voices or anything. But anyway, we heard the voices going up. Or the voice, I should say, and it literally got louder as we were going up the canyon. We were getting closer to this guy, and apparently this guy's been up there drunk for a really long time. But,
having a party.
Yeah. And all of a sudden we reached this flat area, and the voice stopped. And we just sat there and looked around, and sure enough, I was standing right at the sealed off entrance to the number 4 mine. I was looking at the stones were all stacked up. It was just like a stone wall, and you could see the ore tracks coming out of the side of the mountain, and we were right there, and that's right where the voice led us to. That unnerved me. It's a very well documented story. A couple years later, my niece, who was going to Snow College, had a group of friends over. This is Jennifer. And they were telling ghost stories. Well, there was some guy in the group telling the story, and it was the story of this voice up in winter quarters. And this guy happened to have been from Schofield, and all of the kids there called him Crazy Jake. And so this is the story of Crazy Jake. And they told the ghost story about his voices and everything. I've been up there a total of 5 times, and out of the 5 times, I've heard the voice 3 times.
I've always wanted to go. I've never gone.
We just couldn't find it.
So I'm not scared of it. I'm not saying it's a ghost. It's one of those things that I have to say, unexplained. I have no clue what it was, but it's easier for me to say that it's a ghost than not.
I've always wanted to go there.
How far away from the general store thing is the actual mine?
We were shooting the store when we heard the voice.
Oh, really?
And so if you're at the store and you look directly south, you're looking up the gulch.
Yeah.
And you just walk up that gulch, and it's probably only a couple hundred yards before you actually hit the entrance to the mine.
So it was super snowy, so we were right there. We probably just...
Maybe he doesn't like snow.
Maybe. So...
It was too cold for him.
It was too cold for him.
we heard rumors that you can go up there and there will be areas that the snow doesn't stick like you were saying, but there also can be flowers and stuff growing from it in the winter.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I've never been up there in the winter to check that out, but that's what I hear.
Yeah, so that's what we were trying to find. I wouldn't recommend going in the winter.
And it is kind of a little bit spooky now too, because since that's been going on for so long, same thing happened up in Wyoming, and some a mine had been burning for well over 100 years.
They get cave-ins, don't they?
And some kids walked in and fell in because it had gotten too close to the surface.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then I guess just to top it off, the other quick thing that happened to me was Mike and I were down in Frisco. Frisco was a little mining town down in southern Utah.
Isn't that the town that was like ultra crazy?
Ultra crazy. It probably got one of the largest boot hills anywhere. They were boasting upwards of 12 murders a night. They had 2 full-time businesses of undertakers that they just called the Meat Wagon. And every morning they would just come out and go around up and down the streets and pick up bodies. And
my kind of town. It
was just a total lawless town that was a bunch of wild miners that were coming in from all different directions. And they finally hired a sheriff out of Pioche, Nevada to come over. And he just announced his first night that there was not going to be any jails, nothing. No guns were allowed in his town, and if there was any problem, he'd just shoot them. And he killed 3 people this first night, and then things started kind of calming down. But
dictatorships work.
Yeah. But anyway,
old America.
Anyway, so you go into the Boot Hill, and it's a fairly large area, but very few.
Okay, when you say Boot Hill, I don't know what that means.
That's an old Western name for a cemetery.
Okay.
Because, the cowboy was always buried with his boots on.
Okay.
Kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a big area, but very few tombstones because most of these people, nobody knew who they were, so they just dug holes and dropped them in. But you go in there, and there are some really nice tombstones from the local people that lived there. We had done a lot of research of the history of that town. One night we were down there. We'd been there all day, and it was early spring, and it was still pretty cold. And we kind of finished up the night going over to the cemetery. This is kind of one of those weird things. Whenever I go into that cemetery, wherever I go, I kind of just have a desolate feeling. But there's one grave that has always drawn me to it. Her name was Carrie Emma Thompson, and she was just a baby. But I think she died at 3 months old. But we know that her mother, Mary Thompson, was buried nearby. But there's no gravestone to mark it. And there's this little juniper tree there, and so it's a nice place to go to. It just kind of draws you over, and you feel comfortable there. And you're out in the middle of the desert, and you got the desert winds. The tree kind of protects you from that, and it's just kind of a nice place to be. But anyway, it was getting dark, and we were just kind of talking and looking at different stuff and writing stuff down from what we were researching. And Mike got this brilliant idea: let's spend the night in the cemetery. I'm like, why? Well, let's just see what happens. Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, so we didn't spend the night, but it was quite late. It got dark, and everything got dead silent. It started snowing. And those nights when all of a sudden just the light snow comes down and everything's just dead quiet. And that's how it was. And of course, a lot quieter than what you're even imagining, because we're used to city sounds.
When you're out there, it's nothing.
We're closer to 100 to 150 miles from any other, living person. And anyway, it was way out in the desert. And so it got so quiet as we're sitting there. Every sound that you heard, you could identify it. It was like this twig over here was a little cottontail rabbit that had just jumped over to that bush, or whatever. And it was just so unbelievably quiet. And for some reason, Mike, being as weird as he is, he pulls out one of the flutes that I made, and he starts playing the Native American flute while we're out there. Well, of course, if you want to spook yourself, go out in the middle of the cemetery in the middle of the night and play a Native American flute that sounds kind of...
It already has an eerie sound to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here, we're listening to him play the flute and stuff, and nothing happening, just looking around, and I'm getting cold, and I'm like, this is really stupid, let's go. And all of a sudden, it just didn't sound... There was more to the flute than what was there. And he stopped playing, and I could swear that I had heard humming that was humming along with the flute. But after just like a bar or two, it stopped too. And we're just kind of looking at each other. We didn't say anything. And he started playing again. And played for a little while. And as he all of a sudden stopped playing, and this time it didn't stop. And there was definitely a female humming with the flute. There was no question in my mind. It wasn't a vibration coming from a tree or anything else. It wasn't a jackrabbit over there that figured out how to hum. It was a female humming with that flute.
It would have been way more creepy if it was a male, like a really deep...
Yeah. I did not stick around to investigate. I'm not a ghost hunter. Never claimed to be. I was a researcher. And so I didn't follow the trail down to the car. I beelined it for the car. I hurdled headstones all the way to it. And I even hurdled the fence that goes around the cemetery. Didn't even open the gate. And got to the car, and it was Mike's car. It was locked. So I was saying, great, So I'm looking out in the dark trying to see Mike, and he's not coming. And I'm like, okay, he's been sucked into the netherworld, I don't know. But anyway, finally he comes strolling out and stuff, and we get in the car, and he says, okay, before you say anything, tell me, what did you hear? And I said, I heard a woman humming with the flute. And he goes, yeah, wasn't that so cool? And that was the experience, and we left, But like I say, that's a very simple story now. People that watch Ghost Hunters every week, you kind of, that's boring. But me being there, was enough to get the adrenaline going pretty good, and there was no explanation for what I heard.
Well, those are some real ghost stories.
Well, I remember hearing one about getting lost or something, and it snowing, having a blizzard, something like that.
That's not a ghost story.
That's not a ghost story. That was when we were trying to get into the town of Winter Quarters.
Okay.
And yes, we just about died there. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I was trying to remember that.
It was the second day of summer. We didn't have any coats or anything, and an unexpected blizzard came in. We were up on Skyline Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Hit us. We were 8 miles from our car, and Mike had a beard and mustache like you did. And by the time we got back, he couldn't talk. And it was all icicles. It was his upper lip was frozen to his lower lip.
That's in the middle of like July or something, or
no, it was the second day of summer.
Right. Oh, okay.
And but that was us trying to get into Winter Quarters.
Okay. Yeah, I just remember it had something to do with Winter Quarters. So
that was before we were smart enough to just go in and go through someone's private property. So we thought we'd just go the back way.
Yeah,
because property is theft.
If you're going to go to Winter Quarters, go through the private property.
Go through the private property. Well, thanks for coming on and doing this. It was a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again.
Well, thank you. I don't know if that's what you wanted to hear, but
that's it.
That's what happened to me, and like I say, it would have been cool if I'd have seen something more, but mostly is what I heard.
I do have to say, the ones that you tell, the stories, are extremely scary, and most people, after they hear them, don't believe you when you tell them they're not real. That's how truthful they are. So hopefully we'll bring some with us. But I'm trying to get you locked down into coming to the rendezvous and telling some around the campfire. So hopefully that will happen.
And that's what happened. You know, like when you tell the truth of what happened, there's not much there. And people that want to hear a ghost story don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear something scary. So I guess some of my stories are more believable because I take what happened to me, the truth, then I just expand on it.
And that's what makes a good story.
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully you'll be there. We're trying to lock you down for that.
August 30th through September 2nd.
Through September 2nd. PR Springs.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Echo hello world. Far, pull off, start, pass gas, Amazon, fuck them. Go to AmazonCruelty.com. We need money, this podcast is expensive, we are poor. Go to bombsandbeatinghearts.bandcamp.com where you can name your price for their album and we get 100% of the proceeds. Help us out and get some great tunes. If you must buy from Amazon you suck, but do it through witchsidepodcast.com. You'll help us and take money away from Amazon. 0111011011010000011001010101001010. Fuck. Shit damn.